Hey folks, it's Tom, your frugal prepper. I just wanted to show you how I'm planning my garden layout this year, and I did go out and buy all of the lumber and stuff at Home Depot uh, to build it this way. And I just want to talk a little bit about the method that I use is the Mittleider method. And I've tried to. Well, let me say this. I've grown plenty of plants in the past. But now that I use the Mittleider method, I also get food from the plants, right? Um, a normal pepper plant in my backyard, say just a bell pepper, maybe I got two or three peppers off of a plant. With the Mittleider method, the difference is that I might get 100 peppers off of that plant through the growing season. Basically, there's a lot of people don't understand exactly what Mittleider is and what it isn't. Okay, Mittleider is a method by which we give the plants exactly what they need. All plants have like 13 essential things that they get from the soil, and the rest of the things they get from air. I think there's 16 total. Um, so I know like the Growing Your Greens guy did a thing about why he doesn't like Mittleider, but every point that he made against it was just untrue. And I guess unless he had read the book or done a lot more research, he wouldn't know that. Number one is a lot of people do use what they call a grow box. And this is where you build a box and put it on top of the ground and you fill it with sand and sawdust because you don't need dirt because the plants get everything they need from their weekly feed. The other thing that people don't tell you a lot of times or that you don't see is that Mittleider can be done just fine in the regular ground. Okay, so you can just measure out the beds to the appropriate length and space them appropriately and grow right in the ground as well. You can do soil beds instead of grow boxes. A lot of people do grow boxes and they do T frames, but you can also, it covers in the book how to do the stakes. You can water with a hose and a rag. You don't have to build the PVC watering system. So there's many different ways to do the Mittleider method. And it's been my experience so far that the closer I follow the instructions in the book, the better results that I get. Now, typically, when you do soil beds, most people do 18-inch beds. If you're going to do T frames, however, you can also do 4-foot wide beds. And basically, you put two rows on one side and two rows on the other side, and then you're saving quite a bit of money on lumber when you build a grow box or build T frames for a bed that size. Now, a lot of people have probably seen LDS Prepper's videos. He's got a great garden. Um, I, however, have chosen to use soil beds, and he uses sand and sawdust. They both yield great results with if you stick to the method. A lot of people say that the fertilizer is really expensive because you only get these two little bags of it for however much money. And this is one of the things that the Growing Your Greens guy said as well. That one little bag of micronutrients mixes with like a whole bucket full of conventional, you know, NPK 13, 13, 13 to 16, 16, 16 fertilizer. And really, one of those bags for me is enough to feed all of my plants for an entire year when it's mixed up. And you also mix it with some Epsom salts for magnesium. So that's just one ingredient, one small ingredient, that little bag of micronutrients that you buy into the whole thing. And it actually makes a lot of fertilizer. Um, the next thing that I would say is um, you don't. It's not really what you would call a sustainable method on its own because other methods might use mulch or they may use cow manure or any certain types of things to enrich the soil. But what you normally find is that once the plants get into full swing and you really start making some fruit, when the plants need nutrients the most, is when the soil starts to become depleted. By adding the weekly feed, however, you're giving the plants everything they need every week, so the production continues to be strong. There's a vast difference between a plant that looks like a healthy plant and a plant that is really healthy and producing as much as it can produce. You're able to, with the Mittleider method, use vertical growing schemes, especially with the T-frames, so that you're able to grow a lot more in a lot less space by growing plants vertically. And you need less plants to get the same amount of yield. 3 soil beds could easily produce all the vegetables and fruit that a typical family would need. Instead of having to have 20 tomato plants, I can probably have 3 or 4 tomato plants and get more tomatoes than I got when I had 20 tomato plants. I had so many tomatoes last year. I had tomato vines that were 16 feet long, just growing like crazy, tomatoes everywhere. We canned as much pasta sauce as we could. We gave a bunch of red tomatoes away to a local nonprofit restaurant. Basically, this restaurant operates to give its money to a children's hospital. So we gave a bunch of tomatoes to them, and then we had bucket load after bucket load of green tomatoes at the end of the season, which we made green tomato relish out of. It's really something to see plants produce like they're supposed to produce. Instead of a pepper plant being a little small, 2-foot plant that grows 3 or 4 peppers, it turns into like almost like a little miniature tree with 100 peppers on it. So what I like is it's kind of combining what would be an expensive hydroponic system, but still using soil or the sawdust sand mixture as the medium. Just basically, it's there to hold the roots. And it can be very cheap to do. That's another thing that I think Growing Your Greens guy had brought up, is how expensive it was. To get started, all you need to do is a soil bed. You mark it off, follow the instructions in the book, plant your plants, and feed them with the weekly feed. There can be a very low cost to getting into doing the Mittleider method. So basically, I'll show you where I'm going with it this year. I'm doing a 4x30, 4 foot by 30 foot soil bed. I'll zoom in on this just a little. Then there'll be T-frames here, and these T-frames will have 2x4s along the outside. They'll be 6 foot wide, 4x4s with a 4x4 post going into the ground. And then there'll be wires that run, 2 of them per side. Okay, and those wires will be there to tie strings on to grow plants vertically up the strings. I'll then do one 4x20 soil bed here behind where the lilac bush used to be, and it'll be the same way with the T-frames and the 2x4s. And then I'll do one soil bed that's just a soil bed with no T-frames. These two will also have 2x6s around the edge of the bed, just sticking out of the ground an inch or two, to give me a nice solid level surface to build my soil up to. And most people do go ahead and like mulch or gravel down around the beds so there's no grass there. I've chosen just to leave the grass. There's like 5.5 feet between these beds, so there's plenty of room to get the lawnmower and the weed eater in there. And if I have the 2x6, I just weed eat it right up to the edge there. Now I'll have room for another soil bed or two in the future. But in the back corner, I have this giant invasive shrub thing, and I plan to cut that down a little at a time, so I'm leaving myself some space to cut it down and work with the branches and stuff here. I am going to go ahead and do my potato tires, which is just basically where I put my potatoes in a tire and then fill it with dirt, and then as it grows, stack another tire on, put it in some more dirt, and you basically end up with 3 or 4 tires full of tomatoes at the end of the year. Now you can grow potatoes very well in the Mittleider soil beds, and that's probably what I may do in the future. But this year, since I'm not doing any beds here, I'm just going to throw some tires out to do some potato tires here. LDS Prepper's got amazing harvest of potatoes out of his Mittleider garden beds. And then this flower bed that's up here by the shed is probably going to be a big corn circle, which is some good edible corn. And I'll have cucumbers, cantaloupe, watermelons, some probably Kentucky Wonder Beans, some soybeans, other things growing in these beds up here. So I'll just show you. I have some kind of pictures here of where the garden's going to go. If I can find the right folder. Garden area. Okay, there we go. Let me make this full screen here. So here you can see this is the wood. Believe it or not, this is like a few $100s worth of wood here. Whole bunch of 4x4s to build the T-frames out of, and then I've got some old 4x4s stacked along the fence here that are old pressure treated ones that I've taken out. So I'll be reusing those as well to build my T-frames. There's a whole bunch of 2x6s and stuff piled under here. Those are going to go around like the edges of my soil beds. And then the 2x4s go on the outsides of the T-frames. Those are kind of optional, but they do help really stabilize that whole thing and give you something to hook to if you want to do a canopy on it for shade cloth. So I went ahead and got those 2x4s to put on there. And I'm using all pressure treated lumber. Just so that it doesn't rot out. There's another picture of the lumber. And this stuff's actually pretty heavy. It was pretty tiring after I held this down 2-3 pieces at a time on my shoulder from the front gate, because there's no way to really pull my truck in the backyard. And here you can kind of see the area. This is the invasive shrub over here. The shed would be just basically behind and to the left or to the right of the camera here. And then this is where I had my 30-foot soil bed last year. And of course, I'll be expanding that to be a 44-foot wide one instead of an 18-inch one. It'll come right down here. And here is another picture, kind of the same, just a little farther back. Oh, that is the big giant invasive shrub that I'm going to cut down a little at a time. And then this is where the lilac bush was, and I cut that down. And again, you can see here was my 18-inch wide, 30-foot soil bed. So that's just going to come over and become a 4-foot wide one here. Then there'll be a 20-foot one right here, and another 20-foot soil bed right in here. So that's where I'm expanding it to this year, and then in following years, I'm going to have 2 more soil beds and probably some more T-frames and stuff as well. But I'm trying to do it a little at a time without spending too much money. I put all these materials, plus I got stuff for my solar panel project, my generator interconnect project, like several other projects all at the same time on the Home Depot card. And then they run they had a special, like if you charged $499 or more, you got or no, maybe it's $399, 400 or more, then you got 18 months no interest. So I'll work on paying that off over the next probably about 10 months. And once that's all paid for, then I'll be ready to go and charge some stuff for my next projects. That's just kind of how I do it, because I'm not great at saving. I wait for a special deal with no interest and then go. I keep a list of everything I need and go buy it all at once. But yeah, that's basically what's going to be going on the rest of this week in the evenings after work, and then a whole bunch of stuff this weekend. I'm hoping to have a lot of this, at least the one bed finished and plants in it, because I've got squash and cucumber plants and stuff inside that have started that are getting really big. I got to get them in the ground. So yeah, I'm hoping to have that kind of started this weekend, at least the one soil bed, have plants in, and then I'll work on the other soil beds. So that's just a little bit about the gardening method that I've chosen to use. while it may not technically be sustainable because you use conventional fertilizer, fertilizer doesn't go bad. So I can stockpile a lot of it. And a 50-pound bag of fertilizer, um, with the micronutrients and Epsom salts that I have stored mixed up, you know, basically we'll make a couple 5-gallon buckets part way full or most of the way full. And that's enough to last me an entire growing season and then some. So, it doesn't take too many bags to see that you can stockpile enough of this to go 10, even 20 years out and not have to worry about it. And I haven't figured out calories per bed. And essentially, once I have these other two beds added, this bed and this bed, I will be able to grow enough food here in a growing season that I can can it and preserve it, and basically have enough calories out of this area to feed my family for a year out of one growing season. Um, if everything's healthy and it doesn't get any disease, and everything goes as you plan for it to. So that's also kind of an important part of prepping, is knowing how to take this relatively small amount of space and really get a lot of food out of it. I'll put a link to the website below. It's growfood.com. Is where you can get all the Mittleider stuff. And also there's a Facebook group for Mittleider gardening. A lot of great people hang out there. Me and LDS Preppers on there a lot. And Jim Kennard, who's one of the main Mittleider guys, is on there. It's a great place to ask questions and see what other people are doing. If you're interested in this, if you've done a lot of gardening in the past, but you haven't got a lot of results out of it, like me, I was getting frustrated because I would spend all this money on plants and all this money on cow manure and all this money and work tilling stuff, and I ended up with some huge big bed full of weeds with a tiny little bit of food in it, and it wasn't even worth the amount of time and effort that I invested in it. And now with this method, I invest far less and I get a ton of food out of it. Just a bunch of food, more than I can usually eat and can and put back in one season. I'm always giving stuff away, so it's a very good way to grow, a lot of calories in a small place and a lot of nutrition in a small place. Anyway, folks, this is Tom, your frugal prepper. Everybody, be happy and frugal out there. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll try to answer them. And I'll try to get back with you if you have any ideas or suggestions. I always welcome those too. Thanks, everybody. Be happy and frugal out there.